What's going on, lifers? Welcome to another episode of Sick, Scared, and Stupid. I'm your host, Jake Thomas, and today's guest is coming to us by way of the Northeast. He's a good friend. He is an absolute terminator of a human being and a great person overall in the sense of physicality, spirituality, emotionality, and medicine. So, without further ado, he is one of the premier men and leaders in the world as far as in fertility and understanding the development and doing as such. A big advocate for meat eating and carnivore dieting. He's also a great pilot, a jet pilot at that, and he's a good friend and a very busy man. So we're grateful to have him on the show, Dr. Robert Kiltz, the one and only. Welcome.
Well, we all want to live like Jake, and I love what you're doing, putting out there, and more people like yourself that we can inspire to share the story of human health and wellness and making all of us healthy again is what the journey is about. And appreciate your invitation, Jake. Another fellow pilot, by the way.
I'm trying to learn, still trying to learn. But speaking of piloting, Doc, you were on a new flight path this past week with an extended fast of almost 7 days. You just finished up, yeah.
Yeah, it was 7 days. I've never felt better in my life. I've never done 7. I've done 5 already 3 times this year. I do 2 to 3 every month. I typically do 1 meal a day, but I've never done 7 days. And I thought, well, I was just going to do a 3-day fast this week, and everything aligned just right for me to do it. And for me to sort of say, you know what, I'm just going to rock and roll and do this for the 7 days. And it's never been easier. It's never felt better. I drink Gerolsteiner water, and that was it. I don't do, and I do some salt licking, add a little mold and salt a little bit, but I didn't do any elementy stuff or any of that other stuff. And I don't drink coffee, tea, and it's quite amazing. And I actually I have some dry aging meat in the refrigerator. I just had a couple of bites of a little bit, and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to have a little bit. I was going to have my meal. I'm going to have my meal in about 2 or 3 hours and break my fast. Maybe not quite a full 7 days, but only a couple hours shy of it. And, my gut feels amazing. My mind feels clear. My energy. I do walking and I do light weights, and I've been doing that every day. I've been going to work. I get up at 3. I go to work at 4. I'm live at 5 every day. I'm doing a full-on surgeries through the week, and there was no hangriness. There was no depletion in energy. And I really highly recommend it for more and more of us to do more fasting, more extended fasting. Spiritual, it's mind altering, it's strengthening for all of us.
Heck yeah. And congrats to you.
Yeah.
For doing that. I love your frequency in fasting, like you talked about doing that, several times a month, a couple of extended ones or prolonged ones at 5-day intervals, several times a year. I think it's outstanding. We've talked about before August Dunning and the kind of the Phoenix Protocol and his book, and about really getting into those prolonged fasts, and something you and I share as far as in the spirituality sense of it, and finding elevated states of consciousness and being and just overall enlightenment. Those 3 things that have been ubiquitous throughout history, through millennium now, as far as in written text, we'll say, whether it's in theology or spirituality, philosophy, any type of enhanced intellect, have always been extended treks, prolonged fasting, and isolation. And a lot of times those are done concurrently, because if you're on a long walk or an extended trek, oftentimes that's an individual sport for reasons of omission from environments and getting elsewhere, getting away from people, trying to go into some introspection. So you're knocking out 1 and 2 stones between the walk and the isolation. And then a lot of times you're doing that fasted. And I know we shared kind of the most classic sense of those is the 40 days and 40 nights in the desert of Jesus Christ. That did he actually speak to God at that point? Yes, no, maybe, who knows? But who's going to question that? You go 40 days, 40 nights in the desert, dry fasted, not only wet fasted, but dry fasted.
That's right. That's right.
You have earned the right to say you've spoken to God. you've certainly probably gotten to such an amazing headspace that you're going to think you have, or you, again, it's going to be kind of a moot point of arguing, because who could refute that by way of ever being able to have been there themselves? So what can be found, whether it's a 24-hour, 5 or 7, like you're into now, I think is just an incredible thing that we have access to, that we all have access to, that, more and more people seem to be getting into these days.
Well, one of the couple things. One is, historically, we evolved eating far less food than we eat today. And if you did only one thing in life, is eat less frequently. And when you do that, you have more control over your cravings, right? And this idea that I'm hangry, I need the food, I need to eat. I mean, we've been trained for that in our modern world, that you got to eat 3 meals a day. No, you don't. You probably 1 meal or less, because historically we didn't carry around our food very much. When you go way back, we hunted, and you killed it, and you ate it. You actually, the only place for the real food energy of your body is the fat on your body. That is actually the fuel for our body, is the fat. And so, we were meant to gorge on the food, because if you didn't gorge on it, it became someone else's food. There's always going to be another human fighting for your food, another animal fighting for your food. And so we have abundant food. We're built to eat less frequently. And I think we're really built to eat meat, animal meat. We're not built to eat plant foods. And the fasting allows the gut to heal. There's the structure of our epithelial cells contains a sugar layer called the glycocalyx. Because we eat so much, it gets damaged. It changes the electromolecular charges and forces of the epithelial surfaces of our gut, so that many antigens or microbes are now able to set up shop and break down and cause a leaky gut. And by fasting, we allow that to heal tremendously. Even if you're a plant eater, it'll help tremendously. And you mentioned one other thing about God. And to me, we are the gods. There is nothing out there, because the brain, electromolecular forces of the brain actually create the colors, the shapes, the sounds. Our brain takes all of this energy in and creates the story of Jake Thomas, of Rob Kiltz, of everything. And so the only thing you ever talk to is God, because we are the gods. We are all God. And the forces that create God are your forces, because you create through your mindset, good day, bad day, right day, wrong day, easy day, hard day, or what I can do or I can't do. And ultimately, you are born to do everything and anything. And that's who we are. And so I always say faith in God is always number one. I don't care what religion you believe in, because the religions are like our cultures or our political forces. But if you really dig deep and go right back to the ancient stories that our brothers and sisters shared around the fire, on the hunt, those are the real things we're made of, is the story. And I just recently had a conversation with Simon Hill on Ellen Fisher podcast, which is the plant eaters and the animal eaters, the mighty gladiators come together to have the fight of the forces. And it was supposed to be a debate about the science. But I said, well, isn't science kind of just an opinion of the people writing it? And don't we all have reasons for pushing that one specific belief systems? And a little bit like religions, by the way. These are the political forces that are trying to tame the people. But God within you is the only one that can tame you. No one else out there. And I said, well, at the end of the day, the biblical forces are probably going to control more than the scientific journals all day long, right? The Bibles of the world. More people carry the Bible than carry a scientific journal any day of the week. And so you could really, really share an idea through the spiritual, through the philosophy, through the poetry of humanity, more so than you can do it in a molecular structure or a scientific experiment than ever. So, faith first, fasting. Oh my God, amazing. And then fatty meat. And if you can do that, and you can, I can, we can all can, because we're all capable of all things, because you are God within you. And we know the concept of God. And someone says to me, well, I believe in a higher power, but I don't believe in, religion. I say, well, okay, religion is just who we are, political structure. But ultimately, you got to believe in God because you are God. And you got to believe in yourself.
Get me fired up, Doc. Get me fired up in the best way. It's easy to think clearly when you can allow your body to let you think clearly. When people ask about the miracles of healing of food, I don't say food is medicine. And you were asking me earlier about what I've been going over in my studies recently. And, a sentence that really struck me in one of the first courses, this graduate program, talking about food not being medicine. I was like, okay, where is this going? This should get some interesting pushback. It just said food was food. It was just nourishment. It was just sustenance. Now, how it's used, how it's broken down, could maybe be said to, have medicinal effects and benefits. Sure, and some things certainly do. But I'm agreeing with you in the sense that, to me, the diets are important, but it's the body that does all this this miraculous healing. And it's, our abilities to get out of our own ways in many senses, to reduce variables, to reduce the over inundation of, intruders and invaders, because our bodies are constantly having to say, hi, who are you? Nice to meet you. Hi, who are you? Nice to meet you. Hi, who are you? Nice to meet you. Like this just crazy waiting room of intruders and invaders. And whether that's in any form of ingestion through our eyes, through our ears, our mouths, whatever, constantly having to receive, then kind of delineate with who gets processed first, who gets utilized first, who gets stored first, who gets discarded, and all the systems that have to go into work and constantly go, hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you. Hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you. Hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you. As opposed to the body finally getting to go, oh, we can take a rest for a second, because the waiting room is not just packed with people and everybody's on fire and we don't know who half of them are and we don't know how to deal with and store. So when you go through an experience like a fast, for example, or an elimination diet even, be it veganism or carnivore or whatever, but something to where you have reduced those variables, as important as the diets are, as important as the experience is, to me, it's that omission and removal that's allowing the body to return naturally to homeostasis far more than it is about, let's say, the food being medicine itself. It's really about the godliness, to use your word, of the body on its own. And everything else around it is just kind of happening the way it should. But the body is doing what it was always meant to do, which is to be naturally and innately homeostatic. But these influences of the modern world make it very difficult for us to do that with, our drive to hedonic eating and pleasure-based eating and celebratory eating, sad, emotional, just emotionally based, ingestion. And that's through our eyes, through our mouths, through our ears, everywhere. And then we're constantly just hit with these variables. So doing these regular fasts like you're talking about, and like you've just finished today. So thank you for crossing the finish line with us on the 7th day. It's pretty cool. But, the clarity that you've got there, and just from this omission, sounds like it's something that you really, really became loyal to.
This is one of the things you think, oh, I can't do that. Oh, that's too hard. And it really started, I always think it starts with the mindset. What are you thinking? What are you thinking what you can and cannot do? I learned to fly airplanes at 55, jets at 62. And I'm learning every single day something new and different to do. And the thing that probably helped me the most in life is understanding God and finding a philosophy, a human writings that help me understand the power of everything you and I and anyone can do. And the fasting is that benefit because, all the things we need, right? I need food. I got to wake up. I have breakfast. I have lunch. I have dinner. I have snacks. I'm hangry. I got to stop here, get a snack. We have become addicted to food and alcohol and drugs and candy and all those sort of things, right? We go down the list, right? And we're that addiction is something all of us could change when you begin to believe and have faith in the possibilities of everything and anything you can do. And I grew up and raised Catholic, but I didn't really understand it because I couldn't read as a kid. So I kind of got some of it in: dyslexia, migraines, kidney stones. All the bowel problems, ADHD, OCD as a kid. I was in a gang, kicked out of school, couldn't read. I grew up in Los Angeles, street kid. But over time, I was really good at math and science. Math was like easy for me. And then I wound up deciding to become a doctor after I broke a leg in junior college. And I looked at what it took to be a doctor. I said, no way, can't do that. But I was a worker. I loved to work. I was not a sit around kid. I didn't watch much TV. I just loved to get out there. And through science and medicine, I really lost my thoughts and beliefs of God because it was science was going to heal all things. But after years of practicing medicine, it's like something's not right. I didn't know what it was. I had even more bowel problems and all sorts of anxiety, depression. And I went through some relationship issues, some loss of friends and family, and that caused me to seek answers. One of my friends was into Buddhism and philosophy, and then I began to question this concept of God and religion. So I went on a quest to just dig deep into reading and learning all about it. I read a book called The Three Magic Words. Basically, the three magic words are, I am God. We are the gods. There's no human that knows God any more than you do. This is the part, the Pope, the priest, nobody knows God any more than you do. They have just learned some of the philosophy, but much of it is sort of entangled in politics and power games and things like that. And I as a doc, I went into medicine to help heal people. And I can tell you that wearing this and talking about God to my patients has been one of the most healing, honoring, and connecting of all people around the globe. Whether you're atheist, agnostic, but so many people of all faiths recognize someone of understanding faith in God, which I think is honoring of each other's belief systems and each other's lifestyle of love and kindness, whether you're a vegan, vegetarian, Mediterranean, pescatarian, I don't really care. And because I find for me, the carnivore lifestyle has been amazing, and I take care of sick people. And so I always ask people, what do you eat? And they usually say healthy, clean, organic, or gluten-free. And then I have to go through, do you eat fruits and vegetables? Do you eat seeds and nuts? I go down the list of what do you eat? And I ask the question, well, is it possible that every disease we suffer from is actually an allergic reaction to a plant substance or a microbe of some sort? And people say, well, I eat healthy. And I'm like, well, I know what you eat. And I know for myself, who is just like you, by the way, because genetically 99% of us are nearly the same. We're not very different. And in medicine and nutrition, I'm a surgeon. When I cut people open and open them up, I'm like, oh, you're this type of person. Oh, no, you're this type of person. Or I look under the microscope and look at the cell or discuss the molecular structure of things or the metabolic processes. We're the same. Hmm. And I go back to our evolution. I did a TEDx talk a number of years ago, and I call it the human Ferrari. And part of my story was we came out of the trees. This is kind of the story of humans, right? Monkeys in the trees, and we evolved from apes, and I have no idea what we evolved from, by the way. We came down from the trees to eat the grass or the grass eaters. And I think ultimately we're like wolves and lions. And yet the thing that set us apart is the ability to make tools. Because lions and wolves hunt in packs, and many animals are quite cooperative in their packs, right? They're so intelligent. Yeah. All animals, all organisms, all microbes, by the way. And so, this idea that are we really plant eaters or mostly animal eaters for our health and wellness? And I believe ultimately that animal eater is the best. But the other thing is our ability to see God in everything. And getting back to this spiritual journey, because the mindset, is your mind chattered with what I can't do, or I'm not as smart, because you somehow, people say a lot of things out there, but you choose what you hear in some ways. And choose whether or not you heard your parents say you're no good, or you're like, you're wonderful. And I know they said all of that stuff properly, but what were you inspired by or broken down by? And at any time in our life, we can change the narrative. And that's, I think, the part to this journey of spirit and science. And I love science, by the way. I'm a science geek. And I think most of us have the science wrong. That's the only problem. So I ranted and raved a little bit. Sorry, Jake.
No, it's good. It's good. And I'm glad you're wearing your Dodgers hat. You must be very proud, given the recent victory. Congrats to you and the Dodgers for that World Series, by the way.
Oh, yeah. But I love the Yankees too.
I know.
And I've been, we because it would be no fun if the Dodgers won all the time.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of life. But the reality is they're all playing the game. And this is a play the game life. This isn't, you've already won. Everyone that's ever alive has already won the game of life. You're alive. There's nothing you need to accomplish, nothing you need to do, nothing. Because you are here. You are God's story. And so, but yeah, it's always fun to, we love that, right? And I give accolades to my brothers and sisters on all sides, because we're all doing this together. We're in the game of life.
Heck yeah. It's hard to, I think it's hard to, or difficult, I should say, to conceptualize a lot of that, because many people have so much noise going on between the ears, have so much defense or response to impurity or volatility just in their lives, that it's difficult to be able to have an experience. Or someone might say, well, I can't relate to you, Doc, to have that experience. What do I need to do? Where do I need to go? What do I need to take? You talked about taking things earlier and essentially ingestion equating to change. It's very difficult, I think, for us to understand the fact that, well, What if the answer is not? What if the answer is doing less, something like a fast or an omission or an abstinence in order to gain? I love calling that addition through subtraction, because everything about the world now is actionable and action based. I come see you as a patient. I'm already expecting he's going to assess me, give me some type of diagnosis, then give me a solution based, of actionable items. Do this, do that, take this, take that. That's what I'm thinking as a patient. But what if I come there and you're like, hey, this is what's going on. First off, like you said, what's your diet like? I had a conversation with my childhood friends the other day. He just got a lipid panel done, and he's like, my cardiologist said this, suggesting me to get on a statin and a couple of other things, blah, 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 blah. What do you think? I'm just curious for your second opinion. And I was like, wow, I'm flattered that you would even consider me first. So thanks. And I asked further questions before I gave him my own assessment. I said, did he ask you anything about your diet or current lifestyle choices and other health conditions and activity or anything like that? He said, no. I said, interesting. Okay. To me, any type of a panel, any lab work, lipids or whatever, biomarkers being checked, I tell people that it's like a test. And it's a test you can either study for and get a really good grade on, or it's a test that you show up for ad valorem and you get a face value grade based on what you are at that given point in time. Meaning, if you study for the test, you can not manipulate the scores, but you can do really, really well on it. Or you can show up for the test and think you're studying pretty well. You think you're conducting yourself accordingly as a student, and you'll get what you deserve based on what you've showed up as. But to the administrator of that test, depending on the school of thought that they come from, they might say, hey, why don't you come back in a month, 2 or 3? Here are a few notes to make you prepare better if this means something to you, or if you don't feel, like you receive good marks. Make a couple of changes. We can come back, we'll retest and see what you think. Or they say, which is much more common, this is what it looks like. Don't change anything about your life, certainly not what you're eating, because I'm not even going to ask you about that, but rather just take this and see if we can't offset some of those variables and change some of these numbers to get them in more favorable ranges. And just by talking to my friend about this and asking him some of these questions, he was like, wow, that's wild. And I'm like, yeah, it's wild to think that that's wild, but rather that's what matters more, or rather that's what's going to give you a more understanding of your body and being able to not manipulate it, but just will it to do what it was born to do, as opposed to thinking you're going to just add something in to disrupt it. Because again, we're these actionable thinking, we need to do things, we need to go somewhere, we need to take something to create change. Rather, what if it is about omission? What if it is about abstinence? What if it is about addition through subtraction? And I don't just mean that for the physical changes, but to receive the bits of enlightenment, like you're talking about now, the connection, the mind-body connection, especially with spirituality. It cannot coexist with all the noise. It cannot coexist with all ways being overrun by variables in the form of ingestion, especially through food. All the systems that have to go, onto full red alert, DEFCON 1, to deal with so many of the things that we deal with regularly and constantly, not intermittently, but regularly, constantly. Let's call it chronically. How could we ever be able to hear the soft voice of our bodies and our real, like souls and spirits saying, hey, Jake, it's good to hear you. It's good to see you again. I can't hear that amidst all this chaos that I'm dealing with, and I've got stress out of my, up to my eyes. But when you take time like you did and really be able to walk somewhere and go on a 24-hour, even 5-day, 7-day extended fast, man, you've got nothing but space now to be able to hear that very, very, very soft voice. But it's impossible to do it with all those other things going on. So kind of saying that the fast represents a lot, because physically it is the omission that creates all of that space and allows you to hear things in a different way. But it's also symbolic to, it's going against the grain of what we normally attribute to being the requirement of success, that we have to do something. It has to be some type of action. It has to be some type of ingestion. But the fact that it's happening contrasted to that, I think, is a hard thing for us to really believe and kind of invest in.
Silence and solitude.
Sick, Scared, and Stupid is brought to you by Life Like Us, a brand dedicated to empowering individuals to reclaim their health, strength, and clarity in a world that often profits from confusion and compromise. Life Like Us believes in the power of self-determination and the pursuit of personal excellence. Their mission is to inspire a return to natural, unaltered lifestyles that support health the way nature intended. Each product is designed and produced proudly in the USA, using only the highest quality materials to share a meaningful message. By choosing Life Like Us, you're not just purchasing apparel. You're joining a movement that values discipline, self-actualization, and the courage to take control of your health. Visit thelifelikeus.com to explore the full collection and become part of a community dedicated to clarity, strength, and truth.
And the fasting, so you do it alone.
Individual sport.
Yeah, it is. And I think the spirituality of silence, and it's one of the things I practice a lot. You know, we're in the world of immense amount of ideas being thrown at us. Social media, television, radio, and politics and religion and good and bad and right and wrong and easy and hard. All these forces are kind of part of our civilization where we live today. This is, where we live. And you have to be practiced yourself at silencing it. And it's done because you have a narrative in your brain that this is good, this is great. And the grounding work of going out in nature. And everywhere you are, you could go out in nature. Even in the big cities, there's a park. Even if you're not in the park, you could walk down the street. And in your mind, you look around, you see the beauty of everything. And that's, I think, the most important part that I've learned is see the beauty in all of it. Even in the ruckus and the craziness. I see the beauty in all of it. That's the mindset. Doesn't matter, religion, nutrition, your job, your past, your present. Is the mindset is the beauty of what is. And I think the fasting part of it is just the ability to let go of something you've been so ingrained to need so much of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's so many different things we can all talk about, but sometimes just hanging out with Jake and hanging out with someone, and more people. See, I think we're herd. We have a herd nature in some way, not big herds, but small herds, where we connect with other human beings, and it gives us a vibration of energy that's loving, kind, generous, and positive. And sometimes we'll all get a little kind of crazy at it, and we get angry, sad, mad, and depressed, whatever it is, which are normal emotions in human life. But having someone to connect with that will listen and sometimes laugh and cry with you through your emotions. And at the end of the day, these are all just normal experiences of humanity. Even in the carnivore world or keto world or whatever world you're in, we're just all sharing beautiful thoughts of humanity. And we're all supposed to kind of think differently and live a little differently and have these different belief systems. That's all part of it. We're not here to try to make anyone else be the same as us. We're just here to enjoy the differences too. But I think that, like, I do a lot of reading, a lot of listening. I do audible books. Or even I'll just have a YouTube or one of your shows on and just listen to it in the background where I'm in my pottery studio, or
Yeah.
maybe I'm on a walk or something. But sometimes you just listen to the birds and you realize that none of it really matters because we're all on our way to the greatest fertilizer ever. We're going to be the fertilizer for something else. But I think there is a drive for us while we're alive to do something meaningful for humanity. And all of us together are doing it together. But I think that all of it matters and none of it matters. You know, the yin and the yang of everything in life, right? Through human experiences and writings, the writings of humans, the words of humans. And I imagine maybe 50, 100,000 years ago, you and I were hunting, maybe for days and days and days hunting, but we'd be listening to the elder hunter, be guiding us to where to go and what to do, and then at some point of the hunt, at the end of the hunt or whatever it was, where we'd be telling a story. And if you think of the stories we tell, they're not very old, but they must be part of an older story, a very ancient story that the original human religions were the sun gods and the animal gods or the fire gods or the water gods, right? And then we told the stories and eventually we wrote them down. But ultimately these stories, and that's why I love podcasts and video casts, and I love watching good stories that are inspiring because ultimately we're just a story. Jake's a story, Rob's a story, uh, Simon's a story. We're all just stories. And if we can listen and learn from each other's stories, even if there's parts of it we like, don't believe, I don't know, but right.
Yeah. You know, when you're talking about just having things on in the background and keeping you upbeat, this morning I was doing that exact same thing with you while you're making some, shaping some new cups. I had you on in the background, just kind of putting around, doing some of my morning process and flow, dropping a little note to you saying hello. I had my cup, my Kiltz made cup, on the countertop because I just moved into my new place and I was still unpacking some things. And out of that box yesterday, my last box of things was one of your cups. So it was appropriate that I was listening to you that morning, this morning, because I was like, hey, cool, there it is. And yeah, I had this discussion with a group of my people this past week about keeping yourself surrounded by heroes. Reminding yourself that you're a hero. Number one, you kind of talked about, hey, we've already did it, we've already achieved it, we're alive, we're upright, we're here.
Yeah,
Check mark.
yeah,
Just enjoy the ride now. Life, life is an experience. Enjoy it. Like the life's a garden, dig it mantra. Love that.
right.
Life is an experience. Experience it, and it's like it's a heroic journey, and you are the star of that show. But at the same time, like if you need some reminders, if you need further insulation, listen to stories of more heroes. Watch, like you said, stories of more heroes. Surround yourself, immerse yourself. I love that idea of, listening to things more, whether it's people, the birds outside, a podcast, video cast, whatever, but like hearing that, senses of achievement and victory and people having to overcome adversity and circumstances that may be beyond conceivable as being real, or could I have ever done that? How did she do that? How did they do that? How they did. It's written, it's been told, it's documented, it happened. So Yeah, mindset's a huge part of it. You talking about, the desire, the belief. Anyone, 2 words, and anyone, 1 word, everybody, 2 words, and everybody, 1 word, can do what you just did as far as in 7 days of not eating food. Anybody can do that.
Yeah.
Every person on this planet has the ability, the capacity, let's say, to do that. Now, the reason choice is a different story. When people say, I can't do that or I could never do that, that's a choice. That's a decision that's being made to limit yourself, creating limiting self belief. That's a decision. It has nothing to do with means or capacity. Now, if Dr. Kiltz was to say, I could do this, and I would say, I don't know if I could do that. And we're talking about something about physical differences or inabilities or just intellect or experience. You're an incredible surgeon. I am not. To leverage that playing field, or level that playing field, it would take me a long, 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 long time, if ever, to be able to get to that point. But when you say something about, 7 days with no food, it's like I, as a human being, have the capacity to do that. Anything else after that is just about the decision to do so and the self-belief. There's nothing stopping me from doing that other than my own limiting self-beliefs. There is no other barrier of entry required. It's just this simple decision of being able to say, this is what I want to do, so then, in fact, I'm going to do it. And I think that that's a really tough thing for a lot of us to not believe, because I think we all believe it, but acknowledge, admit to being true and saying that I'm afraid. Oh, I could, but I don't want to. Oh, even better. and getting through that abrasiveness and let's say turbulence, pun intended, would be, that's the adventure. That's the real kind of battle is kind of that the negative self-talk that's always going to loom there. I tell this to people about racing, and you see it in flight, obviously, especially in longer flights. For me, for racing and marathon and ultraman and triathlon and Ironman, especially in the Ironman circuit or the USA triathlon circuit, they do not permit the use of headphones on those races. So I think that really thins the herd a lot, Doc, because you can't escape. You're there in your mind. It's for safety reasons that they don't do that, because they want people to be aware of themselves and their surroundings and the water on the road and on the road. But for many people to think about running or riding or just having to go through something like that is going to take time, whether it's a marathon, several hours, half Ironman, full Ironman, you're talking about 12 plus hours sometimes. Many people can conceptualize that of, what am I going to be doing? When was the last time you had 12 hours in your mind, to anyone, that where you're not asleep or unconscious? When was the last time you had 12 hours of your voice in your head telling you to quit? Jake, you have nothing to prove. You could stop. Nobody's going to know. Just fake an injury. Just stop. Okay, we don't want to be doing this. You got way better things you can be doing, man. You realize we have 11 more hours to go? Like, you're barely 30 minutes into the swim. You're not going to be finished until tonight. Like, just stop. For 12 hours. That's the challenge of those races. Is it about physical ability and you have to be able to endure and perform? Yes. But to me, it is 99% about the mind and this determination to succeed, desire to succeed, because the entire time your body's saying, please stop, don't do this. And
No.
then this desire and belief that I want to keep going, and having to like hear that voice on one shoulder say, just quit. You have nothing to prove, dude. Just stop. You in that fast, you're doing nothing essentially. And the entire time you've got a voice that's saying like, okay, Rob, it's enough. 24 is good. All right, 48 was good. 72 is good. Like, we have nothing to prove. What are you doing? What's the point? It required, though, nothing of you physically. Yet it's the mind that's going to decide yay or nay. And same thing to the races or to the spectators saying, I could never do that. This takes me right back to Star Wars, when in Empire Strikes Back, Luke has met with Yoda, and he's trying to take the X-wing aircraft out of the swamp that's been submerged underwater. And he
Best.
can't do it. He can't do it. And Yoda is trying to show him, and he's like, "I can't do it, Master Yoda. It's impossible. I can't do it." And then Yoda's like, "Oh, this freaking kid! I swear, do I have to do everything?" He doesn't say that, but he's showing that with his nonverbals, and he starts doing it, not saying anything. He's just and raising the aircraft out of the water. He moves it and places it back down on dry land. And Luke, in that iconic moment, he's just like, "I don't believe it." And Yoda, he's like, "That is why you failed."
The mind is the master of all of it. This is the most amazing thing. Is it's all a head game, and if you want to get ahead, then get into your head and come inside. The inside is really all it is. And I think that's the thing that helped me the most. Back when my good friend Craig Humphrey, who passed away of esophageal cancer at a young age, and he taught me about meditation, prayer, and positivity. And I think that's the one thing I practice the most. And I've been doing it longer than I've been doing the nutritional stuff. But do or do not, there be no try. Before you become a carnivore or a ketovore, whatever you're going to be, you need to instill the mind in the concept and ideas of what and why and how. And then you begin to do. Or you simply mindset say, I'm doing this, and you do it. That's all you need. And when you let go and let God, then you realize the power that you can do, which is in you. And a drop of water in the ocean is the ocean. A drop of God in you is God. And we all know what God can do. Anything. And so I know you as a human being are part of that everything, and you can do anything and everything. And so, this is the real practice. And I think that's why we show up on social media, on televisions and radios. We're listening and looking for a vibrational energy that's going to inspire us. And at the end of the day, you must be the inspiration of your life. And so we are a compilation of the things we read, listen to, watch, and the people we hang around with. And so that's why I focus on people like yourself that are inspiring me, re-energizing me, and reading books. I always go back to the spiritual texts, the ancient texts. Look at Meditations by Marcus, or the Tao Te Ching, or the Bhagavad Gita, or all of them, all of the great texts and the ancient masters who we look at as the prophets, just human beings who understood the power and the concept of God and had a drive to share it with more people, to have the same joy and understanding of the power of God. And again, it's a human concept. We are the writers of the story. And you can do anything. And I know my good friend Jake would be an amazing doctor and a surgeon. And like anything, it takes the mindset, the practice over thousands of hours in some cases, And maybe some people are faster at it than I am, but just like flying an airplane, it took me a little time to do it. I got to keep practicing, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not doing it, I've got to get back to it and practice it.
Yep.
That's what we all need to do: is keep practicing, keep sharing, keep creating, and know that you and I can do anything. And we do. You and I kind of like to understand the human body, the science of nature, and we like to put it together in a story that we can formulate to make sense of. But we've all heard the concept that science says one thing and then eventually it changes into something else. Correct?
Correct.
So then, what truth is truth in science? If it changes and we find out, oh, that wasn't true. But we do know that the power and the belief in the highest power within all of us is the truth. That you individually are capable of everything with the power of this outer concept that you and I think you can't touch, see, or feel, but it's all the vibrational energy of everything, which we label. See, human beings like to label things, right? We label as God. And yet you don't know the power of God within you. That's much of our problem, right? Well, you're not God, and God's over there, God's up there, or you got to be this or that to know God. Well, that's it's not knowing the power that you have within yourself, and because you haven't practiced or you don't believe it.
Mm.
And it's kind of interesting on this keto carnivore faith and fasting journey. All of us are ultimately learning together. Gladys, who I think just died at 100 and something, and 5 L's of life, love, learning, listening, labor, and we learn from others, all others. Doesn't matter your PhD, MD, DO, your labels just don't matter. Swipe them away. And go do what you dream to do. That's what we're here to do. Fly an airplane, a jet, drive a car, ski down a mountain, jump out of a plane with a parachute, be a mom, a dad, a father, right? A brother, a sister. And ultimately, all of these things that we've given such accolades for don't matter as much as the relationships that we foster in a loving, positive way. That's it.
That's a lot for a kid from a troubled kid from LA that was a gang member and had to deal with dyslexia and ADHD and had later in life aspirations to fly a plane. Where do you get off, going off on a meat tangent? At what point did that happen? Like you didn't have enough problems that you said, hey, I'm going to become a crusader and advocate for this too. Why not? Let's see how many more wrenches I can throw on the spokes.
I always look back at everything as a gift from God to teach me, to train me, to expose me to new ideas and things. And I was teaching myself and sharing with my patients about meditation, prayer, acupuncture, massage to reduce stress, reduce epinephrine and cortisol, and elevate serotonin and oxytocin, and calm the mind and the body through these things, and journaling and things like that. And some of my patients, whatever you did to get pregnant, I want to know what you did besides just having sex. But many people were doing paleo diet, and I'm like, what is that? I didn't know about paleo.
When was this? How long ago?
20 years ago plus. I did Atkins before that, and I was a big, crazy a triathlete, and I did all that stuff for so long. And like, what is paleo? So I dug deep into paleo, and then I dug deep and I found keto, and before this, about that same time, 20 plus years ago, my sister died of diabetes and my best friend from medical school died of cancer. And I'm like, well, I understand when my sister died of diabetes, she had stage 4, and we know that it's a chronic disease that shortens lifespans. But my friend died, Dave Kilmer died of lymphoma. And I'm like, well, he was a healthy guy, never sick. And so that inspired me to learn more about the functionality of the human body and the things that create disease. And then I found carnivore. And about that same time, before that, I found Thomas Seyfried, and then I read about that cancer is a metabolic disorder. And then I found Otto Warburg's work. And then I found Richard David Feynman's book called The World Turned Upside Down. And I was just digging into all metabolic books. And by the way, I was a nutritional biochemistry major in USC in Los Angeles with Dr. Manusky. And so I had some nutritional stuff that I'm like, oh, and but we're learning all the wrong stuff, I think, at the end of the day. But I learned that sugars cause cancer.
Yep.
Then I learned that carbohydrates are never required in the human diet. And from that extrapolation, I realized that no plants are required in the human diet. And then I learned about plant poisons: heroin, cocaine, marijuana, nicotine, caffeine, oxalates, phytates, lectins, and more, antigens. And then I learned about the microbiome in our gut is making alcohol in our gut. The microbes in our gut are not good for us, and they're killing us, because the leading cause of most diseases that we have evolved experiencing were infections and parasites, and not plants, because we didn't live long enough to get most of the chronic diseases that we were exposed to plants. But we also didn't eat a high plant-based diet in our evolution, but our cultures became that in our modern science and propaganda, telling everyone through the Seventh-day Adventist churches and all the powerhouses that you need to eat more plants in order to be non-masturbators and be weak and meek. But the one thing I learned from the pharaohs and the pyramids, if I feed them plants, bread, and beer, I can control you. So the food pyramid is just a takeoff from what the ancient Egyptians were telling you and controlling you with. And so I 15 years ago almost, I started carnivore, and through COVID and social media, suddenly I have a community to talk to, because I shared about keto first, and because nobody's going to do carnivore because there aren't that many out there. I didn't know who they were. And I just did it because I suffered. And when I went keto, I got paleo, I got better. Keto, I got even better. Carnivore, in 1 month, arthritis, psoriasis, migraines, bowel bleeding, kidney stones, bladder bleeding, gone. And I'm like, okay, now wait a minute. What is my job in life as a doctor? To learn everything I can to help you heal your fertility problems. I mean, that's what my day job is. Yeah. But then, to me, it's like I can help everyone by sharing this keto carnivore lifestyle. But if you think about it, keto is scientific. It's not real, by the way. All right. It's just like, almost throw it out. We're either herbivores, omnivores, or carnivores. That's what nature has given us. Yeah. And the beauty of carnivore, it eliminates the food toxins. And it doesn't feed the microbes as well. So by just doing that, Wow. We get caught up in keto. Well, what if you're not keto? What if I don't eat ketones? I don't know. I don't know. And then one other thing that my sister died of diabetes, and I understand why she died, but the question is, what if glucose is not your energy source? If it's not, what is the function of glucose? We don't talk about this enough. And then I learned about the glycocalyx and the glycobiome. And I was like, I was floored. Because nobody knows about glycosylation. Everyone knows about glycation. Glycation is the abnormal binding of sugars onto cellular structures that cause oxidative damage, dysfunction, death to the molecule, the membrane, the cell, the organ, or the organism. And Occam's razor says the simple answer is the one. The simple answer is we're lions. We're meant to eat primarily fatty meat. Raw fatty meat, by the way, not cooked. Cooked meat is glycated and oxidated, and it creates advanced glycation end products, long-term, complicated. But ultimately, raw meat is healthiest. Plant sugars, they're foreign sugars. There are about 9 sugars circulating in our bloodstream that are critical for the glycocalyx. And right now, you and I are making infinite numbers of proteins in every cell of our body. DNA directs RNA, directs the ribosomes to make proteins. But how many people know about post-translational modification of proteins? And what is it? Most don't. Right on. But all proteins must be post-translationally modified to be functional. Otherwise, they're dysfunctional. If you have dysfunctional proteins, what is it going to do for your life? Right on. And so glycosylation is just one of many post-translational modifications: methylation, phosphorylation, ubiquination, hydroxylation. And so there are many more that we probably don't even know. So the protein's made, a molecule of something is added to it to give its proper charge, shape, and function. When you eat, breathe, or drink foreign sugars, they cause antigenic allergic reactions that show up as redness, swelling, pain, heat, dysfunction, death to the cell, the organ, or the organism. And so it really is, if you think about it, every disease we've labeled in modern medicine is caused by the same 5 things. Foreign sugars, mostly from plants and microbes. Foreign antigens, lectins, oxalates, phytates, and more. Gluten. Goitrogens, all of those things. Foreign chemicals, goitrogenic chemicals, not just antigens, but chemicals. Heroin, cocaine, marijuana, cyanide, nicotine, and alcohol are chemicals that are made by other substances, other molecule, other organisms, and they make them in your gut, in your mouth, everywhere in your body. And when it makes those chemicals like alcohol, they circulate everywhere. And so it really is simple. And And the fifth cause is excessive exercise, or maybe even we call the use exercise. If you think about it, exercise is the motion of the human body without the creation of anything. You didn't make clothing or a hut or cut down a tree to use for your life survival. You just went out to run or walk or bike or swim. But you know, if you swam in a pond in Africa or in Florida, you might be taken down by an alligator.
Mm-hmm.
And so human beings, all organisms, none of them exercise. None of them purposely eat food to get fat and then exercise to get skinny. You would never do that. And by the way, fat is the source on your body. The fat on your body is the source of the fuel, the building blocks, the minerals and vitamins that keeps you alive, because you do not use the food you eat right now to become the molecules to make the body. Because if you think about it, the chylomicrons in the gut are taken up into the lymphatics, and they're glycolipoproteins with minerals and vitamins that are delivery trucks to your cells. The amino acids and simple sugars go to the liver and via insulin that converted to fat, and then the liver makes very low density lipoproteins, which is the delivery truck for the minerals, vitamins, amino acids, simple sugars, and fatty acids that then are delivered to every cell of your body. And getting fat, I don't care if it's interstitial, intermuscular fat, subcutaneous fat, or it's all this fat, visceral fat. That is not the cause of your disease at all. And why would your body make anything to kill you? Does it make a certain LDL to kill you, or cholesterol to kill you, or does it make fat to kill you? No, it makes all of those for you survive the famine, the migration, the nesting, the hibernation, the gestation. So ultimately, obesity causes no disease. I don't care what size you are, no disease. The diseases you suffer from are secondary to your mindset and the food you eat, which is mostly made of medicinal plants, medicines that can heal you or hurt you. And if you think about it, why do you think we traveled the world in looking for the Spice Islands? Because we wanted a drug to heal you or hurt you. And the money of the world was built on that. And it really is so infinitesimally simple.
Boy, you must have ruffled some feathers when you brought that ideology to practice. Oh boy, I can only imagine. You know, the the pushback, the pushback you still get. You know, but therein lies the truth behind it all, and I think it's just yeah, it's a tough thing to argue against when you're talking about. You said that really well, Doc, about animals don't have to work out to get skinny.
No, no.
No predator, certainly no predators exercise. I mean, no wild animal exercises to get
No,
skinny. And certainly you never see an overweight or out of shape predator in the wild. You see them in captivity. You
that's
see
right.
out of shape domesticated animals all the time. I mean, we had a almost 100-pound English bulldog
Wow.
when I was a kid. He was amazing. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he was not winning any metabolic fitness or metabolic health contests anytime soon. But that wasn't his doing. That was his environment and his, how he was fed and cared for. Loved very much, but there's so many answers and obvious answers and writings on the wall around us in the form of our environment and the environments we operate within. Yet we refuse to take notes from them. Like you said, animals are very intelligent. All organisms are very intelligent, but we,
Oh,
with our bane, I call it, of free will, have this ability to place inferiority on things that we think to be inferior to us based on our placement in the food chain. And because we see them as lesser things, what could they do to us in the form of offering advice or guidance? You talked about learning and being observant to things, and especially, having gone through losing a sister, gone through losing a best friend. I mean, it must have been very trying circumstances in life. But to be able to look at each of those and see the causality with one, but then also the confusion with the other, and have that be grounds for research and curiosity, and saying, how can let's figure this out. Let's delve, let's dig.
Yeah.
Most people wouldn't do that. Most people would throw up their hands, get upset. I don't know what happened, blame the world, blame God for sure. But to be able to find that as opportunity, well, there's opportunity everywhere. Watch the ants. Why do they do what they do? Why will ants eat full fat, real butter, but they will hard line at margarine? They will hard line at a falsified food product, cheese product, but they will destroy with merciless conviction real, natural, full healthy fats. It's right
Well,
there.
it's interesting. You notice that butter never molds.
Yeah.
See, fat. When you eat fat, you kill the microbes in the gut, which you suppress. You suppress fermentation in the gut.
That's what the hydrophilic aspect of the fat itself,
Well, basically,
or kind of
fat,
smothering the microbe more so.
fat's not fermentable. Amino acids and sugars are. You see, the most important part of the story is glucose must be converted to acetyl-CoA in order to become fat in the liver. So, have you ever measured? What am I thinking? Glycogen
In my own body?
in any body. Have you ever seen a measurement of your glycogen? So, how do you know what it does? Do you know?
I mean, I've done rudimentary versions of it, thinking like, okay, if I've depleted all stores completely by way of fasting, I've measured myself the best I can digitally, not with urine, not with strips, or not with breath, but saying like, okay, if I'm at this depth of ketosis, I know it's not going to be perfectly correct. I can at least say that I'm at some type of baseline to where I've depleted all glycogen. Now, if I replenish, and I use the math of thinking that, okay, roughly at most I could carry would be 500 grams of carbohydrates on me at any given time, roughly 2,000 calories worth. How much of that is deliverable glycogen? I think I can form an assessment and get an approximation, but to do it exactly, no.
That's a complicated story. It makes no sense. Glycogen is a glycoprotein. Glycogen is a glycoprotein. Okay, now what's the primary use of glucose? Glycosylation.
Energy.
Not energy.
Right.
Not energy. I mean, so remember, acetyl-CoA is easily cleaved from a fat molecule, a triglyceride. Do you know this, right? And so why would you ever say, hey, give me acetyl-CoA out of glucose when you got to go through all these pathways to get acetyl-CoA when fat is it? I mean, and I did this real quick, and I don't know if you could. I mean, basically, it is. Here's a triglyceride, right? And then you have your long chain carbon. I mean, a fat part molecule. You have two carbon molecule is cut so fast to give acetyl-CoA. So why would you? So if you really think simply, if you have an anorexic, cachectic, sarcopenic human being, what do they look like?
Not too great.
Okay, how many of them are healthy and well? They're not.
Not.
Okay, so why do we get fat? Ever ask the question, why do we get fat? Is it pathologic or is it physiologic? It's physiologic.
Physiologic.
Uh, if a bear does not get 1,000 to 2,000 pounds in the fall, it will die in the winter. Did you know a polar bear must do the same thing in order to hibernate, gestate? And do you know that a bear that hibernates for 6 months and gestates 1 to 4 cubs loses no bone mass, no muscle mass? What does it lose?
Fat mass.
Fat mass. What's in an adipocyte? Do you know what's in an adipocyte? What's the membrane of a cell made from?
Cholesterol.
Fat. Phospholipids. Has cholesterol. But what else is in that cell wall? Proteins.
Protein for sure.
Sugars. Glycobiome. So now, if I deliver you an adipocyte to a baby through the placenta, what does that baby now get? Every mineral, every vitamin, every amino acid, simple sugar, and fatty acid and cholesterol. And so, can that baby grow on mother's fat only? Yes.
Yes.
So the science of nutrition is snake oil. Because the complicated stories of the metabolic pathways screw us up. What's a Randall cycle for? You can cite it in order to answer a question or a test, and for us, all of us to look like we know something really great, but ultimately it doesn't mean anything because the simplicity of the human body, all the blood flow from the bowels goes where? To the liver. Why would all the blood flow from the bowels go to the liver? Because the liver is the master organ for the human body. The amino acids and sugars that come from your gut diet must go to the liver, and via this hormone called insulin makes fat. Because you know that insulin is the fat making. It's the fat maker. It's not a fat storing hormone. It's a fat maker. And if you do not have a functional liver, what happens to you? You die. And have you ever heard of hepatogenous diabetes?
Fancy. Never.
It's actually ancient. It's old. It's simple. All people with severe cirrhosis have elevated glucose and elevated insulin. Why do they have elevated insulin and glucose? They are eating, so when you eat sugar, what happens to the insulin? Goes up. Why does insulin go up when it sees sugar or protein, amino acids? To put them in your cells or to make fat in the liver?
To make fat in the liver.
That's all. Insulin does not put sugars into your cells. Sugars diffuse naturally through a cell wall. There's no barrier to prevent that. There's no such thing as a blood-brain barrier, by the way. That's another scientific theory that's wrong. If I inject propofol, which is a fat soluble, will it diffuse across the brain barrier fast as shit? Name some chemical that people take that doesn't go right to the brain. Heroin, cocaine, marijuana, nicotine, caffeine. How fast does that cross the blood-brain barrier? Okay? So what do you know that doesn't go across into the brain cells rapidly? Tell me. Nothing. All of it goes through that blood-brain barrier. There's no brain barrier. It's bullshit. Remember, science is theories that people like you and I, trying to get our PhD and get accolades, wrote in order to sound smart, but ultimately it's theories.
Yep. Snake
oil. That's all it is. Glucose is not your energy. There's the glycogen. I have no idea anything about it. except you might have glucose stores in order to provide glycosylation. And so you've never run out of sugar in your bloodstream, have you?
Nope.
Have you ever, did you wear a continuous glucose monitoring,
Yeah.
right? Did your glucose ever bottom out?
Not to zero. No.
No. Well, like when I did my last 5-day fast, my blood sugar was 50. My insulin was less than 2. I felt great.
Yep.
And so, maybe there's something simpler to all this story. Like if you eat one meal a day, and if it might be all plants, but you must have essential fats. You cannot get them from plants, and plant oil is all industrial. You didn't get it in nature.
No.
And I'll tell you what, Jake, you do an all raw plant diet for a month, and I'll do an all animal diet a month, right? I mean,
yeah, been there, done that, and I'm not
right.
Back,
So, but I'm going on and on and on, and
No,
I'm enjoing this so much, and
me too. That's why, Doc. Like real quick to the. That's why I'm here 5 years later, with this carnivore kick still. And the thing that I am adamant about as an aspiring scientist. I'm not there yet. Like you said, the accolade kind of denotes that, but I'm a scientist. Damn it.
No, you are a scientist. Look at. We are what we state we are. That's all it is. A scientist does not need an MD, PhD, or anything. You can be a 2-year-old and be a scientist. Yep. You can be a 9-year-old and be a scientist.
I'm a purist to the scientific method, to the absolute. And, learned long ago, the job of a scientist is not to try and constantly prove law or to seek law. The job is to constantly test the hypothesis to try and disprove it. Yeah. That's the fun and that's the adventure. And that's like, to you asking about an all plant diet and you'll do the all meat diet. It's like, I've been there. And that's what brought me there was curiosity and trying to find theory and hypothesize, not to say this is what's right. This is dogmatic. I'm pounding my fist. I found it. Maha. And that's also why I'm still here 5 years later, because I can't disprove this one. No matter how hard I try, no matter how many experiments I run, let me try to reincorporate these, or let me try to have some of that, and let's see what my energy management changes like. How does my sleep improve or disprove? What does my athletic performance equate to? Or blah, blah. I can't disprove it, and that's what keeps me here. That's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me wanting to unpack it more. It's been great having you today, Doc. It's been great seeing you. I really appreciate the time you've taken with us. This has been awesome.
Well, I'm inspired by you, Jake, always. And whenever I see you personally, physically, the energy, that's what we got to see people in person, because our energy is a vibrational energy. Magnetic. We get a lot from this, and I get it from all the people. And whenever I'm on my lives and things, or watching reruns even, but the vibration and inspiration of other human beings is critical. And so, you're always such a positive, loving, kind guy. And but bringing ideas and going out there and just hitting home runs every day. And the more people we listen and learn to, opposite ideas. And science is really about listening and learning from opposite ideas and being open to game-changing things, for sure. I love it.
And right back at you. I give off the energy that's reflected back upon me. So whatever you see, positive or encouraging or otherwise, that's just me spitting it back out you. So
keep spitting it back out, my brother. Every day we got to.
You're right about the contrast and learning from opposing viewpoints, because that's where I am. I am up to my neck in that right now, in the best way. And people asking like, well, man, don't you, kind of feel some resistance of what you're learning and where you're learning? I'm like, no, this is the greatest counterintelligence in the world. I get to learn and see and try to better understand these perspectives and what people are laying their loyalties to. And for me, I can, discern and disseminate as I please, but to just hear and be kind of like the unicorn in the room of difference and being an outlier, but to observe all these other trains of thought is really, really, really cool. So we'll definitely another episode to talk more about all that.
Yeah, well, let's do it again. I really enjoyed this, and I know this has been a good talk, and I love, again, this conversation is important, and think opposite, but have faith in God. Eat one meal a day, add the fat, and do something you don't believe in, and do something you're sure you're going to fail
Amen to that. Oh
at.
God. Like being a 40-year-old getting in a plane for the first time trying to learn how to fly, or being 55 and trying to do the same, where you're juxtaposed being a child who thinks this is the coolest thing in the world, and then an adult that's going, what did I get myself into? This is terrifying.
Well, we'll dig deep in more stuff we
For
have to
sure.
share and break
For
apart
sure.
and stuff. So, but thank you for having me on. You're the
Thanks for
best.
being here, Doc. You're the man. I'll have a show note in the show notes for everybody else, where to find Dr. Kiltz, how to connect with him, and where to read and learn more about his belief and practice in life and profession and everything otherwise. So for the rest of y'all, there's another episode of Sick, Scared, and Stupid. I'm your host, Jake Thomas. We'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
God bless you, brother.